Are you a guitar builder and have a router, and you have a routing job to do, but you just don't have a damn routing guide? And you're thinking, where do I get one? Because your router doesn't come with one, or doesn't have one, that has a router guide to it, or a sled. Well, I have the thing for you folks. Yes. I'm going to show you, actually, how to make a cheap, inexpensive, or free, depending on your situation, a router sled or guide, whichever, that'll make you never want to go out and try to find another one ever again. So here we go. I'm going to show you how to build one. Ready? Here we go. Alright folks, so what we have here, let me just move these out of the way. What we have here is just boards you can find at Home Depot, any box store really, that sells lumber. And all you need is one of these. Now, it's good to have two glued together so you have more space to work with. However, making sure that it's perfectly flat all the way down, right? Flat. It is flat. And there's no bows to it. Or wherever your workspace is going to be, you want to make sure there's no bow in the wood. You want to make sure it's flat all the way through, which this is. So it's flat all the way around. So these things cost like $5 at Home Depot, right? Each piece, depending on what type of wood. This is just regular common board, right? So if you have to plane it down, plane it down. Sometimes you just got to put work into this stuff. However, you got your piece, you got your neck, and you're like, I need to route the truss rod out, but I don't have a router guide for that, right? You put your piece down. If you have an angled headstock, put the angled headstock beyond the edge of your board, so you're nice and flat. Then what you can do is use the masking tape and superglue trick to hold it down, so you don't have to use clamps, right? It's best to do that because obviously if you use clamps, the clamps are going to get in the way of your route job, right? So use the masking tape and superglue trick for that. Also, get yourself a very thin piece, maybe a 1/4 inch piece of this here, just another common board, right? Just a little thinner. Same process. Make sure this is nice and flat all the way down, with no bow at all, or no chips or indentations or anything. It doesn't need to be square. This is the part where it doesn't need to be square, because your router is just going to follow the line. So you have to make sure that your workspace board is square and flat, because obviously you don't want to cut at an angle your truss rod pocket at an angle. So you got to make sure that's flat. Now, we have that. We have two pieces of, I think this is cedar actually. This might be cedar, but you can get any kind of blocks of wood like this. If you have some laying around that are the same height, same size, it'll be perfect for you. You just basically lay it out however you want it. Lay this down like this, and then you can kind of finagle it however you want. Now, you can have it closer to your work. If your router is closer to your work, then move it closer. And then what you can do is, once you have it set, I'll grab the router to show you. Once you have it set, your router should have an edge on it like this, a flat edge. So put your router at the very center of your line. You should have a center line on your work. That's key, folks. And obviously this is not the right router cutter for this. I would use a 9mm for a truss rod. But put it down as center as you possibly can be on the router cutter. Now sometimes you might have to keep on measure, cut, folks. Remember that. Measure, cut. Now say, for example, that's where it needs to be, right? That's center. You put it where it needs to be. Now you might have to remeasure all this. So say that was my center there. Oops, I bumped the camera, sorry. You bumped it there. Usually truss rods are 16 to 18 inches long for a guitar. And say right there is my center. So you would see if you're there or right there, and we go down to the other end of the truss rod. Now you might need to hold your work down if you don't have it held down. And say for instance that's my center. So you bring this side down. You might have to adjust your router cutter itself, your router, and then that should be good. You should be able to follow that line all the way center. And the way to hold this down is to use either clamps. You would need wide mouth clamps for this, or if you know where you are, mark out where you are to be precise. And then what you would do is use the super glue and masking tape trick. Now this is very inexpensive, but it's probably going to take time to actually get down to where you can actually route down, because you need to measure, and then cut. So it will take more time than just trying to find a router sledder guide, but this is more for people who, like, maybe your router doesn't come with one, or they don't sell one with your router, or it's too damn expensive. So this is a good way to make your own sled or guide, whichever you want. You can make a sled out of this. You just need 2 pieces and then another flat piece to put your router on to go like this, which is also cheap because you just need the same materials and you need a couple screws. So you could screw it down here if you would like. If you're dead center, if you're dead on where you need to be, you just screw it down. However, don't screw down your actual work. Use the masking tape and super glue trick for that. But that's a great way to make a poor man's router guide. So I hope this was helpful for you. Again, measure, then cut. You want this to be perfect. And with a straight, flat edge, there should be no problems for you at all. None at all. You just got to make sure you're lined up with your center line perfectly, and your guide here is lined up perfectly. This might take a few minutes. This might take 10 minutes to get right, but at least you'll get it right, and you've spent like $10 getting this all, $10 to $15 to get this all done. Or if you have just wood available to you, it's free. That way you don't have to search around for a router guide that that might not even come with your router. That's a pain in the ass, trust me. So there you go, folks. That's how to make a poor man's router guide. This is Nate, Apocalyptic Guitars. Take care.